Thank you for joining us to another episode of DEIB Small Talk. We are introducing another series. It's another season and it is talent and business. Today, we will be talking about intentional relationships and look into how intentional relationships can help retention. Intentional relationships, how we can help retention. Today, I have with me an amazing guest speaker. I will be introducing him shortly, but I'll just give us some time for us to read about him before he shortly introduces himself. So let's meet Jen. Jen is a manager of Marketplace Diversity Solutions at Tech System. He helps recruit and retain qualified candidates from historically marginalized populations for his clients. John understands the lack of diversity in technology industry, which kindled his interest in filling this gap. He is very passionate about moving the inclusion and diversity needed in IT to make it more equitable for all. Yeah, I also have a question because I also want to know how he does that, but we'll get to know about that along the show. So, in his role at Tech System as the manager of Marketplace Diversity Solutions, John helps overcome talent obstacle by helping Tech Systems clients to attract and retain people from these historical populations, marginalized populations, in equitable and inclusive ways through intentional relationships. By adding organizations in diversifying their talent pipeline, John drives positive impact in technology communities to create opportunities for people from all walks of life. Throughout his 9 years tenure at Tech System, John has been a technical recruiter, an account manager, an operational leader, and of course, a marketplace diversity leader, which is a position he currently holds. Shortly, I would bring Jan so he can introduce himself in his own words and he can be more personable to the people. Hello, Jen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Florence. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. I'm just going to increase the volume a little bit from my end to make sure that it's okay. So, yes, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate. Thank you for your time. How are you?
I'm doing
Let
well.
me just introduce yourself and your words. Introduce yourself and your words.
For sure, for sure. Again, thank you for having me. Hello, everybody that's watching, listening, wherever you're calling in from. I want to say Happy Veterans Day, but it's been a tough week, right? So I also want to acknowledge anyone that's been affected by layoffs really over the year, but especially this week. Tough times. And before I really introduce myself, I just want to extend a hand. My heart is with anyone that has been affected. And I'm open to connecting with anyone on LinkedIn and extending my network in any way possible that I can help.
Thank you
So,
very much.
Florence, did you want me to go ahead and get into who I am?
Yes, we are going to talk about intentional relationships today. And we'll be looking at who you are a diversity leader in the marketplace in solutions on IT. You're quite a number of things. And I'd like to know like who are you? Like how did you get into this space?
Yep.
What was the journey like? Let's just get the word.
Sure, definitely. Well, I'm a father first, father of two young children. I'm a husband. I'm originally from Tampa, Florida, but I currently live in Stamford, Connecticut. A lot of people make fun of me for leaving the South and now bearing the cold. But like I said, grew up in the South. College athletics actually attracted me to the Northeast region of the United States, and that's where I've been for quite some time now. My wife and I live here with our kids, as I said. Professionally, I'm a diversity leader, marketplace diversity solutions leader to be exact, at a company called Tech Systems. And if anyone's unfamiliar with Tech Systems, we're a global provider of business, technology, and talent solutions, supporting over 80% of the Fortune 500. I've been with Tech Systems for 9 years in many different roles, almost 10 years at this point. I've been a technical recruiter. I've been an account manager supporting clients from a wide variety of industries. I've been an operational leader in 2 different markets in the Northeast. I've led our employee resource groups down in Florida and throughout the Southeast. And currently in my role as a diversity leader, I'm really focused on building progressive strategies to help our customers, like I said, 80% of the Fortune 500, but I'm really trying to help our customers further diversify their workforce and build intentional strategies, for folks from historically marginalized populations.
Hmm. Okay, so how did you get into DEI? I know people, when we talk about DEI, actually when it's coming from like people of color or people in the marginalized sector, they're like, I know it's normal for you to just get into DEI, but what was your journey like how did you get into DEI?
Sure. So, you know how I mentioned some of the roles that I've been in? I was a recruiter, I was an account manager, and I kind of fell into this industry. I wasn't familiar with technology and talent services when I was leaving college, but I was attracted to it, the impact that I can make on people. Now, through that time, I've always been passionate about inclusion, diversity, and equity. I've been the only or one of the few that look like me in a room more times than I can count. And I never had an opportunity to officially be in an inclusion, diversity, and equity role until recently. So I've been in this role for about a year now. And I used to tell a lot of my mentors in the organization that, hey, listen, if there was ever a role that was a combination of a diversity business partner, and account manager and leadership responsibilities to further impact our customers, sign me up. Now, I will say Tech Systems have been very intentional about inclusion diversity for over a decade from a workforce, workplace, and marketplace perspective. But the unique role that I'm in didn't exist beforehand until it did. So to answer your question, Florence, how I kind of fell into it, I was in an operational leadership role, responsible for increasing our customer base and bringing more people into tech in the Connecticut markets that we have. But we say ID and E inside our organization, but DEI was a passion of mine, right? So when I saw that we were building a team from a marketplace perspective to further impact our customers, I knew, given my previous experience, I was already doing this anyway, even though it wasn't my full-time job. I knew it was the right time for me to really lean in and do something that I love.
Interesting to learn about people experiences when we're talking about DEI and how people turn into the space. So people get very passionate about DEI, and they're just like, I need to lend my voices. I need to lend my voice to the society. I need to stand for what is right and to stand against what is not right. And they found themselves like, I was in a space today, and we talked about that. How did you how did you start the journey? And I had various stories, and I also have a story to tell, but um, I'm not the star for tonight. We just want to get to know about you, then we can go into the topic, intentional relationships. But before
Sure.
we do that, I think some biography that I need to mention, and I said it. I said I'll mention it. You said in your biography that you're passionate about moving the inclusion and diversity needles in Haiti. What do you mean by
hmm
that?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me this, Florence. It's a really good question. So, traditional hiring models, they need to continuously evolve because, in my experience, I've noticed that there's still a focus on college degrees rather than capabilities or skills-based hiring. And I talked about I went to college in the Northeast, so I'm not opposed to higher education, but I believe that there are great candidates available that might have been skilled through alternate routes. So if we lean in and if we look at the technology workforce in the United States, it's made up of only 26% women, 8% Hispanic or Latinx, and 8% Black. So let's stay on the Black population for a second. Only 47% of high schools in the US teach computer science. And of the schools that are teaching computer science, only 13% of the students that are Black are taking AP computer science courses. So there's major disparities there, right? Now, if we fast forward to college, in 2020, there were over 97,000 computer science degrees awarded, and Black students receive less than 8% of those degrees. So the point that I'm trying to make here is a candidate might not have had the access to go to college for whatever reason. They might have decided not to go to college for reasons that are important to them, but that shouldn't exclude them from an opportunity, right? I think there's an opportunity for us to focus on folks that might have maybe taken classes to get a certification online, people that have entered a boot camp or some other form of a workforce upskilling solution to gain the skills that they have, And overall, Florence and audience really, um, hiring strategies need to be more inclusive of candidates from non-traditional backgrounds so that we can cast a wider net and really open up the candidate pools. So this is what I'm passionate about, right? When I say moving the needle, this is exactly what I'm talking about. We need to be in a constant state of evolution when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion from a talent strategy perspective, because there really isn't a final destination. We just got to constantly move forward.
Thank you very much, Jan. I'm just going to come over to you. But before we begin to talk about intentional relationship, before we dig deeper into the topic, I just want to welcome those who have joined us. Thank you for joining us today. This is the DEIB Small Talk. If you're joining us for the first time, I'll say welcome. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have our series every other Friday, and we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness. And of course, we have a new series which is called Talent and Business. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on the notification bell so you will be notified whenever we have a new show. Today is on intentional relationship. We want to look at that and see how this can help in retention of the workforce, retention of talent, retention of your employees for business leaders. I have with me John Lulin. Okay, so now we're going to go proper into intentional relationships. I remember during our conversation when we were talking about what's your expertise, getting to know about each other, you mentioned intentional relationship, and I was like, yes, we're going to talk about that. That is the topic to discuss. So now, what does intentional relationship mean to you? And how does this even connect with retention?
Yeah, in this context, I think an intentional relationship is a partnership with, I'll say, diverse IT organizations and or nonprofits that are focusing on giving candidates the skills that they need to help them launch their career so they can thrive. So if employers are truly serious about diversifying their workforce, they need to build relationships that move beyond philanthropy and focus more on intentional diversity sourcing and retention strategies. So I'll give you an example of what we do here at Tech Systems. We have partners that we'll team up with to build diverse pipelines of talent through tuition-free training programs that provide technical education, give the learners hands-on experience, give them an opportunity to get career placement, support talent advocacy, and really through these intentional relationships that we build, we're able to provide alternative methods of training to candidates from historically marginalized populations. So the more access that people have to opportunities to grow their skills, the wider net we can cast so that we can stop focusing on the shortage of talent and realize that maybe we're just fishing in the wrong pools, right? Or we need to expand to fish in more pools to find more candidates, but we can't do that unless we create more opportunities for people.
If you're just joining us, you can introduce yourself. Tell us where you are. Tell us where you are joining us from Europe, from North America, wherever you are. I can see some people showing some love to you, Jan. So you may want to say hi to them. And
Hello.
for our audience, you can please tell us what is your diversity story. I want to push this to the audience. Share with us what's your diversity story. Tell us the diversity challenges that you have experienced or you have seen or you've experienced directly or indirectly, and because this is going to help build our conversation. And if you have questions, there will be a live Q&A towards the end. Tell us what your questions are. Tell us what your concerns are when we're talking about retention or when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness. So we talk about diversifying talent pipelines, and you just mentioned it. I was like, yes, that's the next question I'm going to. So you just mentioned it. So how does diversifying the talent pipeline, because I'm also a recruiter, and one of the things that I look out for is different pipelines I can source from.
Right.
But how does this help retention? Is there a relationship between a diversified talent pipeline and retention?
Yes. So I'll start with this. Diversity is extremely important. I think everyone listening, you and I, Florence, we know that, right? There's a moral and there's a business imperative to ensuring that there's diversity in the workplace. The real problem is when companies try to attract and retain diverse slates of talent without first fixing the systemic issues that exist. So I'll start with job descriptions. It's important that we look at job descriptions and inspect the level of inclusive language or lack thereof first. Then you think about the overall interviewing experience. Is there diversity amongst the panel of interviews? Is there representation for the candidates? Do they see someone that they could say, hey, I see someone that looks like me. Maybe down the road I can get into that role. So is representation a part of it? What's the onboarding experience look like, right? So if you think about the job description, the interview experience, the onboarding experience, they can all have biases embedded that prevent the best candidate from getting the job. And if a candidate doesn't see anybody that looks like them during the interview process, or even once they are working at the company, they're going to question if they truly belong and if they can grow with that company. So bottom line, I think we have to first fix the deeply rooted biases that exist in many of today's hiring models and a lot of companies, to ensure that current employees feel like, and I said current employees feel like they're seen, they're heard, and that they can grow inside the company, and that the environment is creating psychological safety. Once all that is sorted out, then we can continue focusing on diversifying the talent pipeline. So I hope I answered the question, but I really wanted to take a step back, because I think we got to figure out a lot with job descriptions and the candidate experience before they get in the door, before we really focus on hiring.
Thank you. You mentioned about candidate experience. I'm a big one about that because it's one of the things that help our hiring culture. And if organizations do not have an healthy hiring culture, it's also going to show on the candidate experience, because the candidate begin to they just experience it impacts them, and they
Mhm.
feel like they have the experience that in a negative prospect, in a negative way. So instead of they being happy about the role, or even be excited about the organization and the opportunity, after the first screening, for instance, or when they go through the job description, which you mentioned, if your job description is not inclusive enough, and they feel like, look, this is not for me. There's so
Right.
many jobs opening out there, so many. But and when people say, we couldn't find talent, or we couldn't find diverse talent, I'm like, what is going on? Because I know the diverse talent, qualified diverse talents are everywhere. They are everywhere, everywhere. So when you say you can find them, you need to check in what are you doing that is not attracting them. And I believe that this is where intentional relationship comes in.
Mhm.
Because if intentional relationship can come in from various places, come in from manager and team member relationship, it could come in from the recruiter candidate relationship, it could come in from recruiter hiring manager relationship. And I think these are the things that I would like us to discuss, like how can we even advise these people, this various category now, for instance, recruiter hiring manager, recruiter candidates, organization leadership, HR team. So these are things that I believe that we need to look into. How can we define this relationship? How can we advise business leaders to look into this relationship so that these can help long run in retention?
Absolutely. I also go back, and you hit it. I was going to mention something when you were saying that, Florence. Is I think it goes back to, when you think of diversity, equity, inclusion, right? Like, where does it sit inside the organization first, right? Like, who do diversity, equity, inclusion leaders report to, and do they have the autonomy inside of an organization? Do they have the organizational power to drive change? I think we have to start at that level before we even get to the hiring managers, because we have to understand how folks are being held accountable. If there's no accountability, if we're not leading with data, then we're falling on the moral imperative. Like you said, there's a lot of candidates out there, and we want to be good human beings, but organizations, we need to move beyond the business imperative, but we have to start there to have leaders inside of organizations drive change at the end of the day.
For instance, today is 11/11. It's Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day. I would love to say that to everyone out there. Happy Veterans Day. But veterans, like for instance, now military recruitment is another aspect of diversity. And we are now having the militants now transitioning to the workforce. So now, if an organization, or let me give a scenario now. let me say, what would you tell business leaders to capture? Because that's another diverse pool that can be captured, and the veterans, they're one of those with the high loyalty gains.
Yeah, that
How
goes to
they have.
yeah, sorry, Florence. I was gonna say that's a perfect question given the context of the conversation that we're having right now around intentional relationships. So I go back to philanthropy, right? Philanthropy is important. A lot of organizations are making donations to diverse IT organizations, veterans networks, if you will. But there needs to be a level of intentionality behind that. What's next aside from the giving? How are we connecting candidates to jobs? I think of, and I'll name a few. I think of, and this is for the audience, anyone that's listening, but I think of some partners that we have, right? I think of SkillBridge. I think of Tillman Foundation, 50 Strong, right? What are you doing to connect with that community to give veterans an opportunity to move into the civilian world and launch their career into technology? There has to be a pathway, a bridge that connects them to the job. A lot of times it starts with the upskilling and the identification that then leads to a job board. We got to do more than that. We have to say, I'm going to connect with Florence, who might be a veteran, and I'm going to understand what's most important to her. Where does she want to work? What does she want to do? And then I'm going to lean into the relationships that I have and figure out where can we place Florence, because at the end of the day, we have to increase the level of placements, but that starts with the intentionality behind the relationships that we're building.
Okay, so let's talk about diversity in the marketplace now, because I know that is one of your uh, expertise. So, what do you say, and how would you describe intentional relationships in the IT marketplace in terms of diversity, in terms of DE&I? How would you describe the relationships?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I answered it a little bit, but for me, it goes back to what are we solving for at the end of the day, right? So when you think of the level of relationships with DEI in tech, it's like, well, what's the level of autonomy? Are do these diversity and inclusion leaders, do they have the opportunity and the backing inside the organization to really drive change? I think that's where a lot of the challenge lies. Is what is the main function, the main priority of the person that's in that diversity and inclusion role? Are they influencing behaviors? Are they connecting internally to see, okay, what do we need to do on this engineering team? Who are our third-party vendors, our strategic partners? What are they doing? Are we asking anything differently of them? Are we making sure that our partners are intentional around diversity sourcing and retention? And how are we connecting with various groups? How are we connecting with talent acquisition? How are we connecting with HR? And how are all of those functions working with the technology leaders to help them understand why we need to increase representation? But as you tee up that question, Florence, I still think it goes back to the very top of the organization. How are we holding leaders accountable? Because you can have diversity inclusion leaders talking about the business case for diversity, but if technology leaders are not held accountable, or in some instances, some companies tie compensation to changing behaviors, there needs to be something that happens first to drive change.
You just talked about business case now, and if you were in my mind, you said that's the next question I wanted to ask about you. Do you think, I know we as business or business leaders, if they that are listening to us, and HR in general, we always want to tie DE&I to business case.
hmm
Do you think that's uh, maximizing how will I put this, like people's emotion, people's experience in terms of being marginalized, in terms of being underrepresented? Do you think that needs a business case to for us to tackle that issue?
it shouldn't, but it does need one, right? It's twofold. You have the moral imperative and the business imperative. At the end of the day, diversity and inclusion it should be woven into the fabric of a company culture. Um, it's not always that way. Just think of the industry overall. There are millions of people in technology, but I gave the numbers in the beginning. I don't. Some folks might not have been listening yet. Um, we have to have a business case because we're still sitting at 26% women, only 26% women in technology. We're still sitting at 8% Black in technology. We're still sitting at 8% Hispanic or Latinx in technology. And when you look at a lot of big tech companies, those numbers are even smaller. Some companies are around 3 to 5%. With the numbers being so small, yes, there still needs to be a business case. And we have to move forward to say, okay, now that we're starting to increase representation in our company, at what level? Are we talking early talent? Are we talking mid-level, senior level? Are we talking leadership roles? All of that is still running its course. And that's why earlier I said there isn't a final destination. And because the numbers of ethnic minorities overall is 40% of technology and then 26% women, with those numbers, yes, there still needs to be a business case. I'm biased and I'll say we shouldn't need it because obviously I'm passionate about the work that I do. But when I present those data points to you, when I talk about the digital divide and the lack of access to STEM in historically marginalized populations, pre-secondary education, yes, we still need a business case.
Still need a business case. I guess business leaders they will be jumping for joy for what you just said now. Because I would have said we don't need to calculate the return on investment on emotions and people being marginalized, people being underrepresented. They did not have a seat on the table. They cannot express themselves, and even when they do, they get overlooked sometimes. But
That's
looking at it
yeah.
truthfully, because we are in the world of business, we are making a solution for a reason. It could be to make an impact. It could be to help people. It could be anything. But at the same time, what drives the business is, of course, the business. Is the profits, the everything. So we need to make a business case. But at the same time, business leaders need to understand that having a business case does not mean being a parasite to the situations or feeding for profits on the situations, because we are looking to make the world a better place. We're looking to make the world less biased. We're looking to make the world a place for everyone. I just want to quickly say this to our listeners that thank you for joining us. If you're joining us for the first time, please do subscribe. If you have been watching our series and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Subscribe, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on YouTube, and subscribe to our show. We have the series every other Friday, and today with me I have John Lulin, and we're talking about intentional relationships. So one more thing is I want us to talk about intentional relationship to employees. Now I want us to direct it to employees. In one sentence, or how would you advise employees who have been in an industry, in an organization that are probably even thinking of leaving because of being marginalized or being mistreated or being, I don't know what the right word to use, but let's just stick to being underrepresented in the organization. What advice would you give to these employees in having intentional relationship that could help solve some issue and let them get seen, and which would also help the business in terms of retention?
Yeah, that's a good question. If we're talking about current employees that exist inside the organization today, and we're not talking about attracting more folks, it's really two words: mentorship and sponsorship. So, who
Mentorship.
are your mentors and who are your sponsors? If you don't have if you're from, especially anyone, but especially if you're in a historically marginalized population, you're underrepresented inside the organization. You have a mentor, right? That's going to give you direct feedback, be very objective, but also help you, give you the tools that you need to be successful. And then, do you have a sponsor? You have a sponsor. You have someone that's singing your praises, that's talking about you when you're not in the room, the good things that you can do, because when you have those two things, you then get access to new networks within the organization. You get access to new roles within the organization, and doors can open for you. Um, but if you're sitting right now and you're like, well, I don't have a mentor, I don't have a sponsor, that's something that you got to figure out. And when I say that, don't just go knock on somebody's door and say, hey, I was listening to this LinkedIn Live talk and you need to be my mentor or my sponsor. Lean into that a little bit. Talk with your supervisor, your leader, your VP, whoever, and have some reflection. It's performance review time of the year. We're in Q4.
Oh yeah.
Most companies, right? So this is a great topic. Mentorship and sponsorship. Those are two very intentional relationships that everyone should have.
Okay. So now let's direct the questions to attraction now to candidates that are trying to get into an organization. What would be your advice in terms of intentional relationships and how they can stick and stay loyal to organize? We have a lot of job offers out there now, so
Mhm.
let's see what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, amidst the economic downturn and everything that's happening, I still believe it's a candidates market. And I'll go to recruiters, right? I was a recruiter, so it's great to apply to opportunities. You have to think about how many people are applying to opportunities via a job board. Um, Times are a little different now than back when I was a recruiter 7, 8 years ago. But you still have to sit and think about that applicant tracking system, that job board that's getting applications nonstop into it. We can go back to some of my earlier statements around the challenges with that, the lack of inclusive language inside of job descriptions, right? If you look at it from a gender perspective, you have women. It's proven that women need to feel great about the vast majority of a job description to move forward with an opportunity, where men,
Oh yeah.
it's usually lower. It's maybe around 30%, right? So with that being proven, I'll get back to my point, is recruiters. So recruiters and your network. Do you know someone that works at the companies that you want to work? Because there you should already have that relationship. And are you locking arms with recruiters? Can you team up with recruiters, have relationships with recruiters that can help you? And not just say, hey, I'm going to help you apply to positions. But when I say recruiters, I think about what I did, where if Florence was looking for a job, I'm going to try to understand everything that's important to you. I'm going to work to understand your salary range, right? The ideal industry you want to be in. I'm going to know everything, because I'm an extension of you at that point. And I'm going back to the clients that I work with. And I'm going to get you an interview by talking about all the great qualities about you. During this time, I think that's important too, right? So looking at your existing network, building relationships with recruiters. And I want to make one more point on that, Florence, too. Let's say you're someone that, I was talking about folks from non-traditional backgrounds a little bit earlier. Maybe you didn't go to school, and your dream job, you see that it requires a degree. And maybe there's another opportunity. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it requires certification or technical aptitude in certain skill sets. So moving from the recruiter and your existing network, if you have it, evaluating organizations, as I talked about a little bit, diverse IT organizations and nonprofits that can provide you with really a tuition-free workforce upskilling solution that can help you gather the skills that you need to be successful. But with that though, make sure it's an organization that is not just focusing on technical education, but that they're really focusing on talent advocacy, support, career pathing for you beyond the technical training. So if you say, I am a project manager and I would love to be an engineer, if you go into a workforce upskilling solution to learn engineering concepts over the course of a quarter of a year or 6 months, whatever the case may be, do some inspection before you just sign up and jump into one of those programs to see, are they career pathing? Will they advocate for you? Is there job placement at the end of it? Or are you going to be back to square one when you graduate from the program? So that was a lot, Florence, but you really got me thinking with that question.
And another thing I just want to add this quickly is referrals. Referrals is also a very good example that could help candidates that are trying to get their feet into a door in an organization. Referral that can also be possible through intentional relationship, because you go meet this person. It could be a person of value. It could be a recruiter. It could be even the hiring managers or for other roles. And you present your case, and you ask for referrals based on certain things, and that can only happen when you have communicated with them, when you build that relationship with them. As recruiters, the number of referrals we receive, sometimes it's almost like a green check, a green check, a green check. Like, okay, I know I trust this person, so the person is referring is like, yes, and we want to give that person a chance. So referral is very good, is a very good resource for those who are out there, especially to those who have been laid off. I'm currently compiling some a list for those who are in the tech space. So if you can reach out to me if you're in the tech space, you're looking out for jobs in full stack or for software engineering. I do have an opportunity in that aspect that I can actually opportunities in that aspect that I can connect you with. So if you know someone or you yourself are interested in you've been laid off or you're looking for job, I'm not going to be biased and just lay off. If you're job hunting and you're looking for your next new opportunity, I do have some opportunities in the tech space and the design space. So you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is just my name, Florence Udo, and you can see my face and you can always find me. And I know you also mentioned in the stats that you also have an opportunity with that you can share and extend to those that had been laid off. we, I think if you want to talk about that, so we can discuss that towards the end. I believe I see a question coming in, and we'll talk about that towards the end. Okay, before we go into just one more question, before we take the question that came in is on resources now. Resources. So, what additional resource would you like to share with our audience? Then from there, we'll take one or two questions, and we'll go into the last question for the day.
Sure.
Do you have resources that you like to share with our audience in terms of intentional relationship, or in terms of retention, or in terms of even DEI in general?
Yeah, I think I gave a lot of the recommendations. I think I would just extend myself as a resource. Anyone can connect with me on LinkedIn and we can schedule a virtual chat. And I'm more than willing to dive into anything that I talked about today in case anyone mentioned it. I know it'll be recorded. But I guess that's what I would say, Florence, myself, my organization, Tech Systems. And I'll chat with anyone, an employer. It's where I spend the bulk of my time. But like I said, I was a recruiter in the past. So even active job seekers right now, I'm here to help anyone that I can.
Of course, I'm also here to help anyone interested, anyone that has questions or needs support in terms of intentional relationship. Of course, I'm also here. I just mentioned one that I'm gonna do, and which is take a list. So let's go into the question we have. We have just one question for now. If you have questions to those listenings, please share the question. We'll be taking like one or two before we end the show. So this is a question for you then. Do you recommend during job interviews to be yourself? If I am a diverse individual, or should I try to fit in during the
Yeah.
interview process? This is a huge one. This affects almost everyone.
hmm
What would be your
Yeah.
advice on this?
I would say don't cover. I've covered. I've tried to fit in, and I often have conversations with companies or at conferences about moving away from. You use the term fit in. We need to move away from a culture fit to a culture add, because a culture fit is
Yeah.
going to create a homogenous team, which is going to stifle growth, and that's going to create group think. That's the problem that we already have today. I wish I could find the person. I don't remember who said this, but the phrase was stuck in my mind forever. Authentic is the new professional. I can't claim that. I wish I could find a gentleman on LinkedIn that I saw that wrote that. It was towards the end of last year, but
There
authentic
was
is
there
more
was there was
professional.
there was a guest that came on my show the last series I had, and one of the things that he preach is bringing your authentic self to your workplace.
Hmm.
Is a very good loyalist for this show. He's always attends. It's current. I don't know if he's currently watching, but if he is, his name is Kwabana Collins, J. Collins Marcus, and he talks about authenticity. Like that is just a topic. You bringing
Hmm.
your authentic self, and truthfully, Jen, we that are Black or Africans or African Americans or people of color or Latinos, we try to fit in. And that is what we do during job interviews, sometimes even during giving out your demographic information. You're like, no, I don't want to be disqualified because I'm black. I don't want to be disqualified because I'm Hispanic, or I don't want to be disqualified because let me say, I'm white. So you begin to do what? You begin to like undisclosed, undisclosed, undisclosed. I prefer not to say. I prefer not to say. Sometimes it's because you're not comfortable with your skin. If you're proud of who you are, if you're proud to say, yes, I'm black, yes, I'm white, yes, I'm gonna say yes, I'm orange, but I don't know. But like yes, I'm this. You would be happy to disclose that information every time. I'm disabled. I don't. Yes, this is my disability status. This is my military status. I feel passionate about DEI when I talk about it because there is just so much to talk about, so much orientation to give to even not just to the people affected, to the marginalized or the underrepresented, even to business leaders, to our HR leaders. There's just so much orientation that needs to go. So for the person that's asked this question for Tom, I would say, and Jonas also says, bring your authentic self to the job interviews. That's just it. Bring your authentic self to the job interview. We have
Before
another
you move on,
take.
before you move on, Florence, can I make one more point on that?
Definitely.
Because I'm super passionate about that too. If you have to fit in to get that job, and be at that organization, it's a telltale sign that you shouldn't be at that job. You shouldn't be at that place if you have to fit in
Oh, I like that.
to their culture. You should be unapologetically yourself and find an organization where you can, like I said, you can be an add to the culture, bring diversity of thought, bring yourself, your ideas, your lived experiences is going to add value to that company. And if we have to fit in, maybe that organization might not be a place where there's psychological safety, feeling of inclusion, belonging, and you should realistically you should be able to feel that in the interview process, which is what I was talking about a little bit earlier too. So that was just I'm passionate about that too, Florence. We could have had a whole topic on that. That that was a good question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. I believe that Tom, you have answered to that as you should be cultural hard. You should be an addition. Your expertise, your skill set is an addition. And the moment you start feeling less of yourself, you need to take everything. I know that the workplace is becoming difficult and it's hard out there, actually with the layoff that is going on, hiring freeze. But at the same time, we talk about work-life balance. We talk about the organization culture. It's not just business leaders to detect. Even candidates they need to know where and what they want, where they want to go, where they want to work for, where you want to be, where you want to show your expertise or sell your expertise, and what you can accept. So that will be my own advice: is always bring your authentic self. Be yourself. Be proud of who you are. Lend your voices wherever you can, and don't let anyone marginalize you because you're a diverse individual. Okay, I will go to the second one, and I think that will be it today. I'll say, when you think about diversity, there's obviously a tons of areas that need to be fixed, of course. But in your opinion, what are the areas where we can get the quickest win? Oh, move the needle in your words.
Everybody loves the needle,
Oh
huh?
yeah.
um, it's a loaded question. To move the needle, first and foremost, we need more representation matters at the end of the day. We need more representation in leadership ranks. It's not going to happen overnight. There's a huge emphasis on diverse slates of candidates coming into the organizations. That's my job, 5 days a week, working with executive leaders at large scale technology companies, building progressive strategies to help them out, which is great. Love what I do, wake up for it. But in order for us to get wins, I don't know that they'll be quick, but we need more representation in leadership first. Representation in leadership first, more folks that are from historically marginalized populations in the C-suite, in the VP levels, people leaders. That is when we will start to see those statistics that I shared earlier in the conversation really change from 26% women, 8% Black, 8% Hispanic and Latinx. That's when we see the needle start to move, when we see more folks that are representative of the LGBTQI plus community, when we see more veterans, when we see folks that are neurodivergent. Again, historically marginalized populations across the board, but when we see more folks that are currently underrepresented in leadership, that's when things will really start to change.
I'll just add to what you said quickly. We and emphasize there is no quick as win, and this brings me to the world of Simon Sinek. I was reading his book recently, and it described a perfect brand. TVO, a perfect brand. They have the perfect vision, they have the perfect mission, they have the perfect products, but it failed. So there is no quick as win to business. Just like an entrepreneur, there is no, you just have to keep grinding, like the words of entrepreneurs. I have to keep grinding. And in DEI when we talk about DEI initiatives and programs, you create a program, you track, you measure, you adjust, you track, you measure, you review, you track. That's just it. There is no quick as well. But when business leaders have open minds and they're ready to learn and ready to accommodate and ready to be inclusive, that way you can move forward. You can then calculate the milestones, like we've moved from this milestone to this milestone, we've taken these steps over and over, and that way you can see the results because it becomes visible in your culture, in engagements, in retention, even in your head count. You can see all those you can see the results. So there is no quickest win. It's just for you to continue working. It's a work in progress. Continue working on your initiatives, continue creating that culture, the hiring culture, the organization culture, the relationships, mentorship, sponsorship in your succession plans. So that will be my own advice and take on this topic. So I want to say thank you to the questions. We won't be taking any more questions, but you can always share your question in the comment section on LinkedIn, on YouTube. Share your question, and I believe you can get connected with answers. Okay, so we have just one more question. Some questions about you. Fun facts. We've talked business now. So now, fun fact about you. What is that? Just one. I won't get selfish. I want to be selfish. So one fun fact. One fun fact about you.
Okay. I'll give you a love story. I said I'm a husband. I met my wife in the science library elevator of our college 13 years ago. And I was too shy and nervous to ask her for her phone number. So if anyone remembers the T-Mobile Sidekick phone, I pulled out my Sidekick and I asked her for her AOL screen name. And here we are,
Really?
13 years later, 2 kids.
Oh, that is indeed one that I wasn't expecting, and it's interesting to know because I have been with people, and some people just can't talk about. They can approach people, and they're doing great in their business. They're doing great. You see people that they're doing very well in public speaking, for instance, but when it comes to talking with women, they are something else. I'll say thank you for that. And now to round off this session, I'll say, what is that one sentence advice that we can give to HR and business leaders on intentional relationship and how this can help with their retention strategies or DEI strategies?
Okay. It might be more than one sentence, but I'll make it quick. Um, if diversifying your workforce and improving retention is truly important, then like I was talking about earlier, we have to you need to review your overall talent strategy and identify gaps, right? Understand where are we strong as an organization? What gaps do we have? Do we need to build any external partnerships and work with, as I mentioned, like nonprofits or diverse IT organizations to help us evolve? But just do so with intentionality. Philanthropy is important, but we need to figure out how else can we build a strategic partnership to really drive change and increase representation, because there is no destination. There is no final destination. We have to continuously evolve because the market is going to continuously change.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you for joining us for joining me today. I really do appreciate your insights and tapping from your knowledge. Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you,
One
Florence.
word to the audience. Do you have anything you want to say to the audience? Encourage them or any last, I don't want to say last word, but any word, any
Um,
word for the audience.
Job seekers, keep moving. If you weren't listening at the beginning of the call, I mentioned that it's a tough year, tough week in tech. A lot of people have been laid off. Unfortunately, I believe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's going to be brighter days. Keep moving forward. Make the necessary adjustments that you need. Employers, continue to inspect what's happening inside your organization, what's working, what needs to change, and really understand how you can continuously increase representation. And everyone that's watching, thank you. And Florence, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, John. I would say thank you once again to our audience. Thank you for joining us today. This is the DEIB Small Talk. And today we had another series, another season, and it is talent and business. We talked about intentional relationships. We looked at how this can help DEI in terms of retention. And we enjoyed John. I enjoyed John. And if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, click on the notification bell so you get notified when we have a new series. It is every other Friday. We look forward to having you again. Thank you.